get there eventually. So who am I? My name is John Burke. I'm the Senior Director for the Systems Engineering teams with the Majors Group with Extreme Networks. We cover named healthcare, we cover named retail, some named financial accounts, and of course, stadiums. I've been in the business for about 35 years, way before Wi-Fi as we know it now. So I was a cable jockey when I started. I spent about 12 years doing wired and wireless networking solutions across the Northeast. For the last 10, I've done wireless, specifically around stadiums, and built a whole team around it. Give you a little background so you understand what we've done and what we've accomplished, what I've been a part of. In 2012, we entered the stadium market with an opportunity we had at Gillette Stadium. At the time, we were doing higher education, the wired wireless, onboarding students back to school every year. And this opportunity came up at Gillette Stadium. We took a look at the portfolio and said, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. Of course, really having never done it before, right? We were a little bit guessing. But one of the things that came up was, at the time, all the incumbents would not guarantee any number of clients for any amount of data at the time. We took a look at that and said, we can hit a number. We can hit a guaranteed throughput. So I haven't shared this for a very long time. The number we went in, which got us into stadiums, we guaranteed 8,500 people at 300 kilobits per second. That was it. That's what got us in. So last year, Extreme Networks was a $1.1 billion company. So just to put that in perspective, Juniper's north of 5, HP's north of 50, HP north of 63, Cisco north of 53. So dedicate to your craft and you can get in and do this stuff. Start with the fundamentals, planning and construction. So what is a stadium? So I was thinking about the 100,000 people, and the funny part was I was thinking, how many stadiums are still left at 100,000? Most NFL stadiums are now between 72 and like 78. Having said that, Green Bay, Wisconsin, I think is 82,000 right now. The whole city of Green Bay, Wisconsin is 105,000. So there's fewer and fewer stadiums that have 100,000. But when you look at the totality of what a stadium represents, it's a microcosm of a city. It has healthcare, it has retail, it has financial, it has security, it has offloading, right? So carrier offloading. How many times have we heard 5G is here, Wi-Fi is dead? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. So those carriers need Wi-Fi to make their systems better and do those offloads. So they're going to be around for a long time. Fundamentals, great wireless requires great wired. Hopefully I'm not saying anything new here, but I think sometimes we need a reminder. It's not just about where those access points are going to go. Although I heard earlier, make sure the installer knows how to do it and where to put it, right? You don't want it behind an I-beam, you don't want it behind a cement column, so you need some intelligence built in there. But understanding your cable paths, your conduit, your coring, your cutting, these are huge construction projects. And right in the middle of the slide here is probably one of the most important ones, the logistics. It has nothing to do with technology. It has to do with you've got thousands of devices that are going to show up, you've got an installation that you've carved out for probably 120 days to deploy. Those products have to show up on site, on time, accounted for the installers to put in at the time they're needed. So that's the tricky part. The project management logistics is huge. And you can get off the rails very quickly, particularly once the venue starts throwing out blackout dates. So you got this great schedule in place and they say, nope, can't do that one to the concert. Nope, can't do that one, got an event coming in. Nope, can't do that one, corporate event. And suddenly your schedule goes from 120 to more. 6 gigahertz, we've talked about that today. So really good stuff I heard this morning about 6 gigahertz. And one of the things we have to start thinking about is planning. So do you put 6 gigahertz in stadiums planning now? Yes, absolutely yes. These stadium cycles run at least 5-year cycles, 5 to 6 year cycles. So normally year 4 and 5, they're planning for the next installation. So they might not use it this year. They might not use it next year. They're really going to start looking for it the year after and the year after that. And if you don't plan on it now, you're going to be behind the ball on your solutions. This is just an AFC demo of Gillette Stadium to show you some of the availability for 6 gigahertz channels. And you can see there's some incumbents in the yellow space. So again, it's kind of good to know going in what you're planning for, what that's going to look for. Optimistically, and I've been saying this, and I've heard some other numbers too, but optimistically, I'm going to say it now, I think 40 megahertz wide channels. In stadiums now, if you're in the 5 gigahertz space, you're doing 20 megahertz wide. 6 gigahertz, probably 40 megahertz wide channels. And why? Who likes to go to the stadiums in here? Who likes sporting events? A lot of hands going up, right? So you go Most people go for the excitement, they go for the energy, they go for the person sitting next to them to be able to share that camaraderie. But they're expensive, parking's expensive, travel's expensive. You're blocking out an entire day to go to potentially a 4-hour event. So one of the things they're competing with is the at-home experience, right? The refrigerator is 10 feet away, the high resolution, television, the surround sound. It's the experience. So the way they're improving it in stadiums is through technology. The way they can touch the fans with it is Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi is how we get to virtual reality, augmented reality, how you immerse the fan into the experience. Players are wearing wearable devices now, so that now you can be in stadium and actually be part of the game. And that's all coming. So let's talk about basic design fundamentals. First of all, hats off to everyone in here. There's a lot of knowledge in here. A bunch of people that are way smarter than I am, and the capacity for consumption and knowledge is huge. So again, this might be new to some, hopefully not many. The basics of Wi-Fi. So this is kind of our at-home experience, right? We understand how it works in our home system. This is me at my desk, because I have one right next to my desk. This is my wife, because I talk too loud, and she's on the other side of the house, and so I have to turn up the signal for her. What happened, though, is in stadiums, when they first started rolling out, that's how they thought we did it. Throw an AP up, turn power on really high, and it worked okay in the beginning when there weren't a whole lot of users on. But now we're looking at this scenario. Now more people, more adoption, more capacity, and I'll show you where that comes from, because we run the analytics on it to see what the growth looks like. The solution to that in stadiums is to get your access points closer to the mobile users, closer to devices, and there's a few ways to do that. Overhead design is predictable. Free space path loss, if you don't know it, you can go Google it and run the calculations, super easy. Predictable, we know how to do it. The problem in stadiums is you run out of real estate. And I heard something earlier today, which I don't hear mentioned a lot, which is near field interference. So you got to stay away from DAS antennas, other systems that are hanging up there. You've got to put them overhead. And by the way, back to that previous slide, they can't be too far away. Otherwise, you're jacking up your power, which turns up your noise floor, which increases your code channel, which reduces your SNR, makes for a terrible experience. So will you always use overhead? I would say yes. You're going to use them at gates. You're going to use them at parking lots. You can use them at purpose-built locations. But you need to add some other models in there. One of them is handrails. Some vendors have been very successful with the handrail model. And again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So when you look at handrails, they're done normally in the railings, right? You have to think of ADA compliance, making sure it fits in the railing. So some mistakes involved there. There's still cutting and coring, running cable to that location. Directional antennas, you have to have a very good, careful channel plan. Because when you think about bags of water in seats and how far that signal goes, you could be about person 7, 6, 7, and you're going to start losing that connectivity. So what happens? You point them together. Now, imagine building the channel plan where you replicate it over and over and over. You're pointing things at each other, and then people get up and walk away. So what does that look like? So you be very careful when you do your railing designs. I do think they work really great for high-dollar seats, front rails. You could put them cover the first couple of rows or certain unique spaces. One of my favorites, hands down, I'll just admit it, is the underseat model. It's predictable. It does not have those nice spheres like that. It's probably more oblong or maybe even star-shaped. Our first step into the underseat model was at the Buffalo Bills Stadium. We paid people. We bought them lunch. We had 100 people sit in the stadium. We actually put an extra point on a seat, and we modeled it. We walked around and we modeled it. We spent a lot of time looking at what does that cell coverage look like with people in the seats, and then we modeled it with people out of the seats. And we saw that based on that modeling design, it wasn't too disruptive when people left. The cell grew a little bit, but it wasn't enormous. And when you had people in the seats, they certainly dampened that cell signal, but it was a very predictable, repeatable model, so we could build good channel plans. We could design for capacity. In our situation, our case, our product, we could cover anywhere from 60 to 75 seats, so a very predictable model for a capacity standpoint. So we knew, based on adoption, what we needed to process for the data and traffics. Certainly need to think about DFS. Again, more reactionary, right? We put APs in and they listen for the channel and say, is this channel free? And I can use it. A little fun fact, at Hard Rock, I used 9 because I used Uni 1 and Uni 3. I managed to carve out 9 out of Uni 2, and some of you who've been down there are going to say, how? And we say, well, we had to run it every 24 hours, because what happened is they trip up over the 24 hours. But we need the capacity for that event to handle the Super Bowl. And that's what happens, right? When radar's detected, you got to move off channel. So you got to signal the client, and the AP has to move off channel as well. The AFC, which again is still being developed, still hasn't happened yet, entirely, but it's going to be a more proactive approach. So when an AP comes on, it's going to send a signal and say, hey, here's my coordinates. This is the channel I want to use. The AFC knows if there's an incumbent in the space. If there isn't an incumbent in the space, it will allow it on. Conversely, if an AP comes on and there is an incumbent in the space and it provides those GPS coordinates and the channel request, it will be denied. So there's going to be some changes in how we think about that modeling in Stadium, and we're not fully done that. We're still working through some of those models. Something else I also saw again today, so it's nice to see, honestly, this is kind of confirming for me that I was talking about this stuff and other people are too. How do you deal with the fact that you have legacy clients and you have new clients? So again, I'm going to call it, I think you're looking at 40 megahertz wide channels and a 6 gigahertz. But when you start looking at the client, you've got to be able to support those legacy clients. They're going to be around for years. They're not going anywhere fast. You're going to have at least 5+ years of that, of legacy clients on WPA2. So you may have to have redundant SSIDs. You may have to have a way to carve out where you're going to run 6, where you're going to run 5, what's that going to look like to ensure that you have the best experience for clients in venue. And it's not going to be easy, it'll be complicated. But at the end of the day, 6E technology is a godsend to stadiums. When we were dealing with, particularly if you're doing a stadium near a seaport or an airport, you can't use DFS, you're stuck with 9 channels. Try creating a usable grid in seats, roughly 5 rows by 15 seats across, repeatable, 9 channels, and make that so you don't have a lot of co-channel and noise. Really, really tough. So with Wi-Fi 6E, we got 59 and the 20 megahertz, which I don't think we'll use. 29 channels in the 40 megahertz, potentially. So that's huge. So let's talk about analytics. Everything we talked about now is on-premise, right? So it's APs, it's switches, it's power. I didn't even touch on that. Part of your infrastructure, make sure you have enough power. I mean, have you had to troubleshoot APs that are low power? Terrible, right? So that's all the prep work. That's everything that gets you to here. What I'm going to talk about now is analytics, which is it's installed, it's up and running. I'm not running around with my test tools, although I will tell you at the Super Bowl this Sunday, we're going to have some of the Net Ally AirCheck G2s. We have 6 of them. We'll be walking around during the event to provide that feedback. But you can only do that with people in venue. And most venues during an event, you don't have a bunch of employees running around with test tools. So you need to rely on your analytics and your insights into how the network's performing and what it's doing. We've been the Super Bowl provider for analytics for the last, this is going on to year 10. A little history, and it's funny, I skipped over on the slide. Back in the beginning was we had designed for 4 Super Bowl stadiums. We supplied those networks. We became the analytics provider for the NFL back in 2013. 2014, we became the Wi-Fi solutions provider for the NFL. So that's why we've been able to, for the last 9 years, monitor what clients look like in venue and what they did year over year. So historically, we've been able to watch the number of adoptions increase year over year, where they were doing it. So you can see on the graph there, there's kind of a purple, there's an in venue when they're in the seating bowl during the game. You can see that their increased use has gone up. So they are active during the event itself. And also, not just the percentage of users year over year growing, but the rate of data that they're using. So you will see there's a little tick on, there's a little high point there. That was Super Bowl 54. That was Miami. And that still remains the highest, which is an average of per user data consumed during the Super Bowl period. And speaking of 100,000 seat stadiums, we're not only doing this one Saturday, but the following week I'll be at Daytona 500, and that's 101,000 seats. So what are you looking for, right? So there's a technical side of it, operations, how many clients are on, what bandwidth are they using, how fast are they going, what's the rate per user. That's all the technical stuff. Things are up and down. Do I have the right power? But this is often the business side of it, is what are the applications they're using? How are they using them? What's it look like historically? What are the client trends? What are they doing year over year? That's one of the things we look at the Super Bowl is it's a great place to look at what exists in that bowl, in that stadium bowl, and what are people doing year over year? And we've watched things increase and decrease. We've watched social media go up in Facebook one year, and then Instagram the next year, and then switch over to Snapchat. So you can watch year over year the trends of what's going on and where people are going. Whether people are going and looking at vacation sites. I mean, I've been in stadiums and watched people in Gillette Stadium specifically, at a Gillette game, watching a Red Sox game on their phone. So, very real use of the technology. And you couldn't do it without Wi-Fi. As all of you, as people who potentially administrate or participate on those game or event days, and are there to watch and monitor people and watch these networks, one of the things that's really important to understand is how people are moving as well. This helps you understand a whole bunch of things, right? It shows you where you can improve on your Wi-Fi network, the transition from where the person comes in, the fan comes in to the stadium, what gate they're using. Are they using an escalator? Are they using a ramp, stairwell? How do they get to their seat? And oh, by the way, during the event itself, how are they transitioning through that venue? It'll help you understand where the concessions need to be improved, where you have choke points, where you need to look at capacity, or maybe even coverage gaps. Because you might see people moving in a place that doesn't make sense. You go check it out and be like, wow, I never knew people walked this way. So, again, this QR code, you'll get yourself a free copy of David Coleman's 6 and 6E for Dummies. I want you to think about this from the analytics perspective. So in 1943, Abraham Wald, he's a mathematician. He was commissioned by the US military to look at damage on planes that have returned after being hit by the Germans. And he took a look at the data, and what they expected him to come back with was how to reinforce the damaged areas of the plane. And his answer was, reinforce the areas that aren't damaged, because those are the ones that aren't coming home. That's all. Thank you much.